have right now, as you can see, we have Commissioner Trevor Velinor. He is the police commissioner, U.S. Virgin Islands police commissioner here. And, it's so upsetting for everyone regarding what's happening in America, all the protests, throughout the world, that they're responding to the horrific and tragic death of George Floyd. And I felt it was, definitely pertinent to have a discussion today regarding just our policing here, because we don't have that fear. I grew up here and born and raised, and you never had that thought to be fearful of those who have committed and dedicated themselves to serving and protecting here in the VI. So we definitely want to have that conversation of police brutality and situations that are occurring in the States as opposed to what we experience here, and then definitely build on the foundation of what support we could provide to the VIPD to continue serving and protecting the territory. On I'm Making It Happen, we discuss how we can make it happen in our minds, bodies, finances, business, and culture despite the inevitable and not so pleasant challenges, and what a difference a week makes, right? We were worrying about COVID-19. Now there's havoc of a different kind that's happening all across America and various countries. And I'm referring to the protests happening as a result of the constant, inexcusable, and unexplainable deadly forces imposed by many United States police. We're not going to focus on the events specifically, but today's conversation discusses like the police brutality in America versus policing that we experience here in the USVI. And we have Commissioner Trevor Velinor joins us today to discuss this weighty subject. And I also want to say that thank you to our USVI police department, because we don't have to worry about what's happening, like those in the US. So we're going to get into that. So thank you so much again for being with us this morning.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Yes, as a Virgin Islander, my heart bleeds Virgin Islands. I love the Virgin Islands. I love the people of the Virgin Islands. We're one people. We're united Virgin Islands. And so, it's a very good time for us to really demonstrate our activity, our engagement, our connectivity to the rest of the universe, but also recognize that we are Virgin Islanders.
Definitely. And, have seen, I saw your press release on I think it was Saturday night. I don't think Toby sleeps, but on Saturday night, I saw the press release go out or I saw it in the morning. And I was like, I had a different topic for today, actually. But with everything that was happening, I felt it was necessary to change topic because this was on everybody's mind. But we'll feel good that, we have reliance on our VIPD to serve and protect us. And we want to talk about maintaining and protecting our cultural sensitivity and awareness and the importance of it. So I want to just give you the opportunity to make a mention of the press release that you sent out on Saturday, which I thought was so appropriate regarding addressing, the incident or situation surrounding George Floyd's tragic death.
Again, thank you for that question. The situation and me writing that op-ed was really about me just bringing light on something that I've always brought light on, where we have people who are disenfranchised, and particularly Black and brown people. We've seen from a historical perspective where in many areas they've been over-policing or there've been excessive force used on our people, people of African-American background and also Hispanic, Latinos, etc. And so this situation, as tragic as it is, it's not the first time. And unfortunately, we've seen many of situations like that. However, we also know that policing have a responsibility, and they have a responsibility to be trained up and also to be aware of differences, and also to listen to the folks in the community. And it's unfortunate that we've seen too many incidents of Black and brown people being impacted by these tragic circumstances where an arrest leads to a death. And so we've seen the Garner situation in New York. We've seen other situations throughout the country which have caused mass amount of demonstration and so forth. And yet we revisit these situations time and time again. So it's so important for us to recognize and bring light on these issues and be able to say it is wrong. I looked at the video, and I must tell you, it took me a while to look at the video. There was no need whatsoever for that officer to do what he did, and for the officers who were there to not redirect that officer who was there on that individual's neck. It was inappropriate. It was not in keeping with any training. And so therefore, I just did not comprehend that. I am here to say, however, that the Virgin Islands Police Department, everybody knows, and you've heard me say this before regarding us being on a consent decree. And the reason why we're under a consent decree is because historically, we had utilized excessive force. So we're not immune from this, right? But I will say that we continue to go in the direction of just practicing those best practice, which involves 21st century policing. So as being a part of a consent decree, it allows us to literally do those things that are best practices to get more in compliance and be able to resolve and address issues through training, through engagement, through interactions. And so we're now in a situation where we're in a compliance stage of the consent decree. So we recognize that, but our issue has not been one where it's been a black and brown versus another race. It's really been a situation where it was a training deficiency, I believe, and then we had to change the culture by which we performed the jobs that we did. Predominantly black and brown people are the primary people who are within the police force here in the Virgin Islands Police Department, and we're a predominant population. So we have a minority population generally as the majority here, and we have the same reflection in the police department.
Well, we thank you so much for all of that you shared. You touched on a lot of the questions that I already am going to ask, but I realized that I know there is a consent decree, so that you have the complaint and compliment form. So that's where that came in, because there used to be excessive force that you said that used to be implemented, but not like how it is in the States, like discrimination or profiling, but just in regards to how they executed their jobs.
Yeah, so typically when you're on a consent decree, it's because of a historical or a fact pattern of where there was cases made of excessive force. Mm-hmm. And so there's an agreement between the Virgin Islands government, the Virgin Islands Police Department, and the United States Attorney, Department of Justice, that recognized that we could do better. And so we've been under the consent decree for more than a decade. And in 2018, the federal court ruled that we had obtained a level of compliance. Okay. And so they said, keep doing what you're doing, do that for a couple more years, and you'll continue to be monitored. And at that point, you will then be out of consent decree status. Now, even when you're out of a consent decree, every police department, 21st century policing, you have to be able to police yourself. So even though you're out of consent decree status, you still have to do policing in a manner that demonstrates that you have the ability to be accountable for your actions. And so we also have a compliance and change management unit, CCMU. And so essentially that unit will take over the responsibility of the monitoring team and independent monitoring team that's currently monitoring the Virgin Islands Police Department. So our CCMU, or the Compliance and Change Management Unit, they continue literally to investigate the matters at hand. If there's complaints by citizens or excessive force being alleged or the use of force, then they actually participate in being able to track, identify, the internal affairs investigate those particular situations, and we're able to recognize where there are deficiencies or recognize what are the some disciplinary requirements that we have to enforce, because again, we have to be able to police ourselves.
Conversation has been with Police Commissioner Trevor Velinor, and we've been discussing, of course, the incidents happening right now in the States surrounding George Floyd and the protests, not only because of George Floyd, but because of the constant and consistent brutal engagement that the police officers have been conducting in the States. And so we appreciate Police Commissioner Velinor for being with us today to address those concerns, because although we're not in the States, it is definitely still affecting us, because it is affecting those of our ethnicity. and that is concerning. And we have family in the States as well. Of course, we have a whole different experience of life than Americans, African Americans in the States, as us being Caribbean African Americans here in the territory. Then that also has to do with, you know, our hue. Like we are, most of our VIPDs are from St. Croix, from the Caribbean for the most part. And I think that's where we continue to have the cultural sensitivity and awareness. Do you agree? And if so, what are your plans to continue recruiting in that way so that cultural sensitivity and awareness is maintained here?
Yes, no, excellent question. It's so important that the policing reflects the community as best as you possibly can, right? So that there's that connectivity between the police officers and those that they're policing, so to speak. And then there's that mutual collaboration. And so here in the territory, the mass majority of our officers are from the territory. The mass majority of VIPD officers and local police officers are from right here in these United States Virgin Islands. However, we know that we need more officers. We need more people to be interested in law enforcement. We have recruited here extensively in the territory, and we've also tried for policing to come on in and work alongside. We find that when people come from elsewhere, they also bring their cultural exposure and they bring it into this environment. And we also contribute to them because they're in a environment where we're, again, the majority, we're impacting. And so therefore they make adjustments and so forth. But I say that to say that at the end of the day, we're still looking locally for individuals who are interested in becoming police officers.
Well, thank you for those points. I do have an individual from Florida who's connected with us on the Zoom. Actually, he's a Virgin Islander. And so we have John Wilkins, who is from Florida, or lives in Florida, but from St. Croix. And he wanted to, you know, give a comment and ask a question to the commissioner. He's a former Davis Cup captain, USVI, for the U.S. Virgin Islands. And he's very involved with training children in playing in tennis. So thank you so much, John, for connecting with us.
Thank you so much for having me on today. I was listening to the commissioner and understanding everything that you're saying, because I grew up home and experienced policing there and experienced the policing here. And home is a completely different response based on the individual is a person outside the uniform. And outside that uniform, that is Miss Barrow's nephew or son. And before he gets home, she'll find out what he did. So It comes back to being the person and understand the culture. So when the police dealt with us as kids, you know, we're jumping off the pier or jumping off the waterfront, they dealt with us in a different way. The police here, when I got here, I was in shock because I went to day downtown at 18 playing tennis, and I got slammed to the floor just for walking with my books and bags trying to catch the train because I fit the description. You know, because I was running for the Metro Mover, not because I was running away from somebody, because I was going to be late for practice. So the mentality is preconceived here. So you're already guilty before you do anything. You're targeted. You're picked out. So the social, when you leave the house, you're on guard. As of with home, you know, if you do something bad, you're like, yeah, my son, I did something bad. You know, all right. But here, you're already being targeted without doing anything. And I think that's a big difference between the Caribbean islands, not just that we live all in the same fishbowl there, home, but also the mentality on the preconceived thoughts, which we would love to have that mentality from you, Commissioner, here in the States. I think they can learn a lot from us in the Caribbean, that we're not having that same issues that we're having here because of the head. Just this morning in the news, I saw another police with his knee on a guy's neck here in Miami. Like, yeah, a dreadlocks guy, and he was saying he can't breathe, you know? And all this is going on, and they're still doing it. This shows that it's systemic. It's a normal practice. And the only reason why it's getting blown up now is because we have cameras and videos, you know? And even then, they're taking off their body cam information. But up here is pretty crazy right now compared to home. It's pretty dangerous to go out. I've seen police on my way home shoot after people just by looking at them curfews at 9 o'clock and 9:01. They look at you and shoot after you, and the police are Polaroid scared because people are attacking them. So it's really a different environment, I think, from what you're experiencing home. Nicole, how was it also there in St. Kitts Nevis, and how was it home in the Virgin Islands, Commissioner?
Yes. No, absolutely. I think people come to the table with their various biases. We're all influenced by our experiences, and we have biases based on our experiences and so forth. And so it's so important for us to try to navigate and expose each other to as much as we can, so that we reduce those biases and so forth. And so that's why having organizations that have a very diverse workforce is so important, because then you can cut through those biases, and you can have engagement, and you can identify your differences, and be able to say, okay, I get it. I understand why you do things that way and whatnot. Cultural sensitivity training is so important for police department.
But for the children, because even for myself, I mean, it was a whole different thing going to school. Do you think that we need to have this kind of training to, make children aware when they're going away to the States? Because like John had to find this out, because we go to the States with a whole different mindset, and a different way of being. I learned that when I was in college, how I showed up in class was different than my other African-American classmates. I had a different confidence about it, and I didn't know that it came from coming from a predominantly African Caribbean culture here. So do you think we need to have something in the school system to prepare our children regards to, operating in the States, and what they should be, what they should be aware of?
That's a very tough question. It's a valid question, but it's a tough question, because the thing about it is that we want to assume that people know how to treat people. We want to make the assumption that it's just as simple as, hey, someone come to your island, you treat them well, and you go to some other location, you get treated well. That's the assumption that we make, right? And for the most part, most people treat us well. Most people treat other people fairly well, right? They go about their business, so they say hello and they keep moving and whatnot. But there are some people who, again, they're influenced by their prejudices or by their biases and so forth, right? So for me, when I was leaving home at 17 years old, the guidance that I got was from my godmother and my mother. I mean, they said to me, hey, you're going into another location, be careful. But even with that, it really doesn't prepare you for that type of a situation, because, again, you're expecting for law enforcement, if not anyone else, to treat you in a certain way. Yes, you're going to have respect, but you also don't believe that it has just been explained. You're going to be tossed down to the ground because you're running to catch a train to go practice tennis. So that's something that really and truly, it's hard to say that you can be trained to really understand that dynamic. It's not something, and unless you've lived in that world, really and truly, you can't really relate to it. I also want to add to the narrative that it's also so important to recognize that I believe the mass majority of law enforcement officers are well-intended and come and wake up every day to do a very good job. But unfortunately, you have a very small minority that I believe who either make bad decisions or who are making bad judgments, and as such, oftentimes for us as African Americans, we obviously see that we're the ones who are paying the price for the bad judgment, and but we want to really highlight that overall, and I've said it before, we go to law enforcement for support, and when we don't get that positive support, or if we become victimized, it really stays with the person who is victimized, because that's an experience that you did not expect to come from a law enforcement officer. Here in the Virgin Islands Police Department, I believe that, as have been emphasized, even in the uniform, that's Miss Cora's son, that's Miss Mavis' son, that's Officer such and such. And, over time, just people know you because you have a vested interest in them quite frequently, right? And so it's so important for us to be able to identify that, in the mainland, a lot of times what I've heard from the folks, and I've lived in many cities in the United States, is that particularly with the Black and brown community, they feel a sense of over-policing. Whereas here in the territory, I have not heard one person say to me that I feel overly policed. In fact, the exchange has been totally different.
Understand.
Hey, we need more police officers. We don't see y'all enough. You're not coming through. We don't see nobody on their foot. They're not walking downtown Frederickstead or uptown Christianstead. Over in Charlotte, we need to see more foot patrols and so forth. So people really want for us to be more actively engaged and really having more of a connectivity. They're not overly concerned about not going home at the hands of a police officer. They're really concerned about other incidents that are impacting our community, like what happened a couple of days ago and last night again in Oswald Harris Court over on St. Thomas and in other areas in our territory. So we have a very high calling as law enforcement here in the territory to continue to serve as best as we can to protect our community.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. And thank you so much, John, for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
And tuning in for your inputs, like how we can continue to support you in efforts in, serving and protecting the community, because it doesn't just fall under the police department. You also need support from the community. So.
No, thank you so much for saying that regarding just the support for law enforcement. It's a two-way type relationship. Law enforcement in every location really requires a connection between the people that we serve and the police department. And so the Virgin Islands Police Department is no exception in that regard. We believe in service to our community. And likewise, we believe that there must be that symbiotic relationship between the police department and the community at large. And so we continue to work day in, day out to address the issues and concerns from a law enforcement perspective that is so required in our community, and continue to ask the public for any type of information that they may have relative to any incident that may have occurred. We have a responsibility to literally get out there and try to figure out ways that we can best serve and protect our community. And by doing so, it allows us to feel safer as a community. It allows us to understand that there is civility and a rule of law. And it allows us to literally be the best Virgin Islands that we can be. As we talk to some of our seniors, for example, a lot of times their concern now is kind of like have increased significantly, because on one hand, they're concerned so much so about their safety, right? They're concerned about if the burglar or someone who might burglarize their home. They're concerned about whether it be gunshots in the area. And also they're concerned about their health from the perspective of the potential exposure to COVID-19 and so forth. So all these are factors that literally we as the Virgin Islands Police Department, we have to be sensitive to.
One question on the Facebook Live is like, they want to know why aren't there cameras in various places? And then also, if somebody wants to have a crime watch in their neighborhood, what can they do to implement that?
Yes. So relative to the cameras, we're working on getting cameras in a very near future. Probably within 6 months, we're going to have a lot more cameras than we do have today. There are cameras in our community, and we have utilized some of those cameras in our community. But we're going to have a lot more cameras probably within the next 4 to 6 months in our community. And so, cameras, it provides essentially a force multiplier approach. It gives us some additional eyes where we can be able to identify things that may have occurred in certain areas. So we're working towards that. Yes, so for Crime Watch, we can help you out. If you call VIPD in either island, we can help you out in terms of getting together with your community and talking a little bit about setting up a Crime Watch program. The point of contact is our crime prevention Captain Sandra Colburn, and she will actually get with a few officers. We'll come out to the community, we'll take a look at the area, we'll give recommendations, and we can help you set up a crime watch. That is so important. So we have victim witness advocates, and their role literally is to respond to situations where there are victims or witnesses and provide them with a voice. So they are essentially that conduit between the law enforcement officers and the individuals who have been victimized or those who are witness to crimes and so forth. We have victim witness on St. Croix and also on St. Thomas. They're very engaged. They try to identify resources that may be out there that we can connect to be able to ensure that our victims have the available resources to them. So a lot of times they're connecting with Human Services, Department of Health, just other agency and other outreach organizations to make sure that our victims and our witnesses get the services that are available to them. So as you heard the chief say over in St. Croix, Chief Elsco, last week Friday was a day where Virgin Islands police officers got up very early and they executed several warrants. Warrants related to incidents in the Paradise area and in the Casa Coakley area and so forth. On that day, they were able to literally recover and seize 10 firearms off the streets of these United States Virgin Islands, in St. Croix, very specific. And these are crime guns. These are individuals who possess these firearms unlawfully. The guns were here illegally, and we were able to get these guns off the streets. Better yet, we are also able to arrest individuals who possess these items and who were involved in criminal activities. It's very important to note that we, the Virgin Islands Police Department, our goal literally is to work tirelessly to protect our community. That's the number one priority of the Virgin Islands Police Department. Over on St. Thomas, we're doing similar type initiatives where we're conducting investigations and we're conducting search warrants, and we're piecing together the puzzle to be able to perfect cases so that individuals can be held accountable for the activities that they've been engaged in. We in the territory, we believe in utilizing our talents to be able to perform the job that we need to do in a constitutional way. Constitutional policing is so important. And so, our responsibility is to our community. If individuals, are getting out there and working, we expect that we're gonna have great impact on our community, but we also need the community to continue to be a partner in this process and for us to continue to rise above. Many of you have seen, footage of individuals in Oswald Harris Court a couple days ago, and again last night, where they're doing some really just nonsensical behavior. We can do better than that. Relative to the protests, I support protests. I will say that we also need to be very, very organized to be able to make sure that we are not adversely impacting our health by being exposed unnecessarily. And so we're telling our community, we are not going to approve anything with individuals who are mass gathering. It's so important for us to continue in the trajectory that we are. We don't need any additional people coming down with COVID-19 because it's a devastating virus. And so I'm asking the community to just use temperament, be engaged, and continue to support your Virgin Islands Police Department.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I know you're so busy. You have so many things to deal with right now, and we appreciate you for taking the time to share the information and to address what's happening on the national level, and then, give us information about how, the VIPD is committed to serving and protecting us here in the territory. If you don't see something happening, create it. Be the change. Until next time, keep thinking outside the box, coloring outside the lines, and remember, it's about you, me, we. So make it happen.